Phoenix, a 54-year-old millionaire, lived in a stunning penthouse in Marseille, France, overlooking the Rhône River. As the CEO of a thriving pharmaceutical research company, Phoenix had achieved everything most people could only dream of: designer clothes, exotic cars, lavish parties, and an exclusive social circle were all part of a life meticulously crafted over decades. Known for a sharp intellect and relentless ambition, Phoenix was also an outspoken advocate for LGBTQ+ rights and had been in a committed relationship with Adrian, a charismatic entrepreneur, for 9 years. Together, they were seen as a power couple, celebrated for their philanthropic work and luxurious lifestyle. Despite the external glamour, Phoenix's life was largely devoid of spiritual belief. Raised by parents who only attended church on Christmas and Easter, religion had always been a peripheral aspect of life. By high school, Phoenix had dismissed the idea of faith entirely, viewing it as outdated and irrelevant in the face of modern progress and success. Life, Phoenix believed, was about shaping one's destiny, seizing opportunities, and enjoying the rewards of hard work. And yet, beneath this confident exterior, subtle signs of wear and tear had begun to appear. If you believe in God and near-death experiences, subscribe to Life at ND today. Discover inspiring messages from God through powerful near-death stories that bring hope and understanding. Hit subscribe now and join us in spreading the light of faith. The day everything changed started unremarkably. Phoenix had been preparing for the launch of a groundbreaking new pharmaceutical product. A project that had consumed months of effort and was expected to generate billions in revenue. Seated in the minimalist elegance of a home office, Phoenix reviewed presentation slides while sipping a double espresso. The stress of looming deadlines had been building for weeks, but Phoenix brushed off the occasional chest pains as nothing more than anxiety or perhaps too much caffeine. Life was full of pressures, after all, and this was just another hurdle to overcome. As the morning stretched into afternoon, something unusual caught Phoenix's attention. The koi pond outside the office window, normally teeming with vibrant, darting fish, had become unnervingly still. The koi floated motionless as if frozen in time. The sight was unsettling, but Phoenix was too preoccupied to dwell on it. There were meetings to prepare for, emails to send, and countless tasks demanding attention. By mid-afternoon, however, the physical symptoms became impossible to ignore. A wave of exhaustion swept over Phoenix, unlike anything experienced before. The tightness in the chest, once a dull discomfort, began to intensify. A sharp, radiating pain spread down the left arm. Phoenix reached for the phone to call an assistant but found the fingers uncooperative. Numb and trembling, the phone slipped from Phoenix's grasp, clattering onto the polished marble floor. Panic set in as the pain grew unbearable. It felt as though an immense weight was pressing down on Phoenix's chest, suffocating and relentless. A thought flickered through the haze of pain: this was what a heart attack felt like. But how could it be? Phoenix was only 54. Fit, and meticulous about health. Regular workouts, organic meals, and routine medical checkups were all part of the regimen. Surely this couldn't be happening. Desperation took over as Phoenix tried to stand but collapsed instead. The cold marble floor unforgiving against the sharp contours of the designer suit. The room seemed to spin wildly, the edges of vision fading to black. Through the haze, Phoenix caught a glimpse of the reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows, a distorted image of a powerful figure brought low, crumpled in agony. The irony was not lost in that fleeting moment. All the wealth, all the success, meant nothing now. Stripped of control, Phoenix felt a chilling realization of vulnerability. What happened next would only be understood later. Phoenix's cleaning lady, arriving for her routine shift, found the collapsed figure and immediately called for emergency assistance. The paramedics arrived swiftly, but the prognosis was dire. Phoenix had suffered a rare and unpredictable heart condition, a spontaneous coronary artery dissection. A tear in one of the heart's blood vessels had led to a catastrophic failure, a condition with a notoriously low survival rate. For 7 minutes, Phoenix's heart had stopped. The body lay lifeless, unresponsive to the frantic efforts of the medical team. Yet, during those 7 minutes, Phoenix would experience something that defied explanation. Something that would challenge every belief and assumption held up to that moment. What unfolded in that brief span of clinical death was more vivid and profound than anything Phoenix had ever known. And it would alter the course of life forever. The moment Phoenix's heart stopped, everything changed. There was no warning, no gradual transition, just a sudden shift. Phoenix found themselves suspended, looking down at a chaotic scene unfolding below. The paramedics were working furiously, voices sharp and urgent, though they sounded distant, as if filtered through layers of water. Their movements seemed exaggerated, almost surreal, as they battled to revive a lifeless body sprawled on the marble floor. That body, Phoenix's body, looked small and fragile, a startling contrast to the larger-than-life presence Phoenix had always projected. Hovering above, Phoenix was acutely aware of every detail: the beads of sweat on a paramedic's brow, the glint of sunlight reflecting off the glass coffee table, even the faint hum of machinery in the background. Yet none of it felt real. Phoenix tried to speak, to shout, but there was no voice, no sound. There was only the sensation of being weightless, untethered from physical form. The experience wasn't like flying or floating. It was something else entirely. Gravity seemed irrelevant, and movement felt effortless, guided not by physical laws but by thought and intention. As Phoenix drifted upward, the walls and ceiling of the penthouse dissolved into a mist, offering a panoramic view of Marseille below. But it wasn't the city Phoenix recognized. Instead, it shimmered with an otherworldly quality, a vibrant interplay of light and shadow. Certain buildings glowed with an intense, radiant light, while others were dim, their edges blurred as if consumed by a creeping fog. People, too, carried their own light, some bright and pure, others flickering and faint. Some were nearly engulfed in darkness. Phoenix felt an instinctive understanding that these lights represented more than physical appearances. They were a glimpse into the unseen, a reflection of something deeper. For a moment, there was awe, a sense of wonder at this newfound perception. But then the light faded, replaced by an all-encompassing darkness. It wasn't the familiar darkness of a room with the lights turned off, nor the soothing kind that accompanies restful sleep. This was an oppressive void, thick and impenetrable. It carried a weight that pressed against Phoenix from all sides, suffocating and inescapable. There was no sound, no sensation, only an overwhelming silence that seemed alive with its own malice. In that darkness, memories began to surface, unbidden and relentless. Phoenix saw snapshots of life, each moment vivid and uncomfortably detailed. There were the grand achievements and moments of pride. Yes, but also the times of arrogance, selfishness, and indifference. Every sharp word, every act of neglect, every instance of prioritizing personal gain over others played out like a reel of film projected directly into Phoenix's consciousness. It wasn't merely a recollection, it was a visceral reliving, complete with the emotions and consequences attached to each choice. Phoenix realized, with startling clarity, how these actions had rippled outward, affecting others in ways never considered. The cutting remark that lingered in a colleague's mind, the self-centered decisions that strained relationships, the blind eye turned to opportunities to help those in need, all of it was laid bare. And beneath it all was a profound sense of regret, not born of fear, but of recognition. Each memory carried an undeniable truth. This was the sum of a life lived for oneself, detached from a greater purpose. The darkness seemed to pulse with this realization, amplifying the weight of Phoenix's choices. For the first time, The vastness of existence felt painfully finite. It was as if Phoenix had been running a race but had only now seen the finish line and realized too late that they'd been on the wrong course all along. Just as the regret became unbearable, a single point of light appeared in the distance. It was faint at first, a tiny flicker that seemed impossibly far away. But as Phoenix focused on it, the light grew, expanding rapidly and filling the void with its brilliance. Unlike any earthly light, it wasn't harsh or blinding, it was alive, pulsing with warmth and energy. It carried a sense of both power and peace, a paradoxical combination that drew Phoenix closer despite an undercurrent of apprehension. The light brought with it a profound awareness and understanding that everything about the experience thus far had been leading to this moment. Within its glow, Phoenix felt exposed, as if every layer of pretense, every constructed identity, had been stripped away. There was no hiding, no denying, there was only truth. The oppressive darkness retreated entirely, consumed by the radiance. And yet, standing on the threshold of this new reality, Phoenix felt an unmistakable pull, a sense that they were about to encounter something, or someone, that would change everything. The light was not just light. It carried presence, intention, and an invitation. Phoenix hovered, caught between the instinct to retreat and the undeniable urge to move closer. There, in the heart of the light, something or someone was waiting. As Phoenix moved closer to the light, the sense of awe intensified. It wasn't just an illumination, it was alive, pulsating with energy and purpose. The closer Phoenix came, the more the light revealed its essence: warmth, love, and power, all intertwined in a way that defied human comprehension. Within its glow, Phoenix felt simultaneously drawn in and exposed. The light didn't merely illuminate, it seemed to pierce through every layer of their being, uncovering truths Phoenix had spent a lifetime avoiding. And then, within the center of the radiance, a figure appeared. It was both human and more than human, an undeniable presence that carried authority and compassion in equal measure. The figure's face was difficult to describe, both familiar and overwhelming in its brilliance. Phoenix felt a rush of recognition, though no prior memory could explain why. The figure didn't speak in words but communicated directly, a form of understanding that transcended language. In that moment, Phoenix felt as though a lifetime of questions had been answered in an instant. The figure's presence carried a duality that was hard to bear. On one hand, there was an indescribable love, a warmth that seemed to pour into Phoenix's very essence, healing wounds that had long been ignored. Yet, on the other, there was a clarity that burned away illusions and excuses, leaving only raw, unfiltered truth. Phoenix's life was laid bare, not just the actions but the intentions, the motivations, the hidden parts of the soul that had never been acknowledged. As this unveiling continued, the figure gestured, and Phoenix saw two distinct paths materialize before them. The first was broad, wide enough to accommodate throngs of people moving with ease. It looked pleasant, almost inviting, with its smooth terrain and lack of obstacles. Phoenix could see countless individuals walking this path, their expressions content, their pace steady. Some faces were familiar colleagues, acquaintances, even strangers Phoenix had encountered in passing. The sight brought an initial sense of comfort, but as Phoenix observed further, something changed. The path led to a destination shrouded in shadow, a place Phoenix could not fully discern but felt instinctively was not where anyone would willingly choose to go. The closer people came to this endpoint, the more their faces reflected fear and regret, as if they had realized, too late, the true nature of the path they had taken. The sight left Phoenix with an unsettling mixture of sorrow and unease. Then the second path appeared. It was narrow, rugged, and steep, cutting through terrain that seemed almost impossible to traverse. Few people were on this path, and those who were seemed to walk with a sense of purpose. though their journey was visibly difficult. These travelers carried a light within them, a glow that stood in stark contrast to the shadows surrounding the broad path. Their faces were marked by determination and peace, a quiet strength that suggested they knew exactly where they were headed. The figure's voice, if it could be called that, resonated within Phoenix's soul. There was no judgment, only an invitation to understand. The broad path, Phoenix realized, represented the easy choices, the pursuit of comfort and self-interest, and the reluctance to question societal norms or personal desires. It was a path Phoenix recognized, one that mirrored much of their own life. The narrow path, on the other hand, was unfamiliar, challenging, and daunting. Yet it radiated something undeniable: hope. As Phoenix continued to process what lay before them, the figure's presence grew stronger. They weren't just showing Phoenix these paths, they were inviting a choice. But before Phoenix could respond, the scene shifted again. It was as if the light had enveloped the entirety of existence, bringing with it a cascade of visions. Each one was vivid and undeniable, showing Phoenix the ripple effects of a life lived for personal gain. There were moments Phoenix had long forgotten, times of success and celebration, but also instances of harm caused unintentionally or otherwise. There was the colleague whose confidence had been crushed by a dismissive comment, the friend whose pain had been ignored because it was inconvenient, the partner who had silently struggled while Phoenix pursued ambition at all costs. These weren't just memories, they were revelations, accompanied by an understanding of how each action, no matter how small, had impacted others. The weight of these realizations was almost unbearable. Phoenix had always prided themselves on independence and success, on shaping their own destiny. Yet here, stripped of those constructs, they saw the fragility of it all. It wasn't guilt that consumed Phoenix, but a profound sense of loss for the opportunities missed, the relationships strained, and the greater purpose ignored. And then the figure spoke again, not with condemnation but with clarity. The voice conveyed both love and urgency, an unmistakable reminder that choices carried consequences, not just in the present but beyond. Phoenix understood, perhaps for the first time, that life was more than the sum of personal desires and achievements. It was a tapestry of connections, each action and decision forming threads that affected countless others. As the visions faded, the two paths reappeared, and the figure's gaze seemed to ask a silent question: which path would Phoenix choose? Phoenix stood at the intersection of the two paths, suspended in a state of profound reflection. The broad path loomed familiar, its ease and comfort mirroring the life Phoenix had lived thus far, a life of self-assured independence, societal acceptance, and unchecked ambition. The narrow path, rugged and daunting, felt foreign and uncertain, yet it radiated an undeniable call, a pull towards something deeper and more meaningful. The figure's presence remained steady, not demanding but waiting, allowing Phoenix the space to wrestle with the weight of the choice before them. Phoenix's mind swirled with conflicting emotions. On the one hand, there was resistance, a fierce attachment to the life that had been painstakingly built over decades. There was the wealth, the influence, the accomplishments, and the relationships that had defined success. But as Phoenix revisited these memories in the figure's light, the cracks became more apparent. Moments once celebrated now carried a bittersweet undertone, colored by the understanding of how shallow and fleeting they truly were. There had been joy, but it was temporary. There had been pride, but it often came at the expense of others. And there had been love, but it was fragile, conditional, and incomplete. The figure didn't speak in words but conveyed truths directly to Phoenix's soul, bypassing the layers of doubt and self-defense that had long been constructed. The broad path, the figure seemed to communicate, is built on illusion. Its ease comes at the cost of truth, its comfort at the cost of freedom. Many walk it because it is safe, familiar, and unquestioned. But its destination is not what it seems. Phoenix felt a pang of fear at these words. The broad path, though crowded and vibrant, led to a place of shadow, a realm where light and connection ceased to exist. Phoenix hadn't wanted to believe it at first, but the figure's presence made denial impossible. The narrow path, though harsh and difficult, carried a promise, a destination Phoenix could barely comprehend but instinctively knew was worth the struggle. Why is it so hard? Phoenix thought, directing the question toward the figure. The answer came, not as words but as a flood of understanding. The narrow path demanded surrender, letting go of pride, selfishness, and the false identities constructed over a lifetime. It required humility and a willingness to trust something greater than oneself. For someone like Phoenix, who had built a life on control and self-reliance, this was no small demand. As the choice loomed, the figure gestured, and another vision unfolded before Phoenix. It was Adrian, Phoenix's partner, moving through life with a confident exterior but carrying an inner turmoil that Phoenix had never noticed or perhaps had chosen to ignore. Adrian was on the broad path, walking with purpose but unaware of its end. The sight struck Phoenix with a deep sorrow. For all their years together, Phoenix had assumed they were building a life of mutual happiness and fulfillment. But now, in the figure's light, Phoenix saw how their influence had steered Adrian further down a path of fleeting pleasures and distractions, away from something far more essential. The weight of responsibility pressed down heavily. Phoenix had always seen life as an individual journey, each person accountable only for themselves. But this vision shattered that belief, revealing the interconnectedness of choices and their far-reaching consequences. The figure's gaze carried both compassion and urgency, a silent acknowledgement that Phoenix could still choose differently, not just for themselves but for those they had impacted. "What must I do?" Phoenix asked, though not with words. The question poured out from the depths of their soul, raw and desperate. The figure's response was immediate, a clarity that filled Phoenix's entire being. "Repent. Turn away from the path of illusion. Embrace the truth. Even when it is difficult, align your life with purpose, not desire. And when you return, share what you have learned, not out of judgment but out of love." The word return jolted Phoenix. Until now, they hadn't fully considered the possibility of going back. The experience felt so final, so transformative, that the idea of returning to the physical world seemed almost unthinkable. But the figure's presence carried an unspoken assurance. This was not the end, but a turning point. Then the light around them shifted, and Phoenix saw a broader vision of humanity. It was as if the world had been laid bare, its physical form peeled away to reveal the underlying forces at work. Phoenix saw the struggles and triumphs of countless individuals, each grappling with their own paths, their own choices. There were moments of breathtaking beauty, acts of kindness, courage, and selflessness that shone like beacons in the darkness. But there were also moments of profound sorrow, choices made in fear, anger, or ignorance, leading to pain and separation. Phoenix felt both overwhelmed and humbled by the scale of it all. The figure's presence remained constant, offering reassurance amidst the flood of emotion. "You are not alone," the figure seemed to convey. "But you must choose. Your choice will not only shape your future but ripple outward, touching lives in ways you cannot yet imagine." With that, the vision began to fade, and the two paths once again came into focus. Phoenix looked at the broad path, its allure now dimmed by the truth revealed. It was tempting, yes, but it carried a hollowness that could no longer be ignored. Then Phoenix turned toward the narrow path, its rugged terrain a stark contrast but carrying a quiet, unshakable promise. Taking a deep breath, though there was no breath to take, Phoenix stepped forward. It wasn't a physical step but a decision, a surrender, a commitment to a truth greater than anything they had known. The moment Phoenix chose, the figure's light enveloped them completely, filling every corner of their being with warmth and clarity. It wasn't the absence of struggle but the presence of purpose. A guiding force that promised to remain even in the darkest moments. As the light intensified, Phoenix felt a pull, a sensation of being drawn back. The figure's gaze remained fixed, carrying a final message that burned itself into Phoenix's soul. Choose this day whom you will serve, and when you return, walk the narrow path, no matter the cost. The transition back to the physical world was jarring. It felt like being plunged into cold water after basking in the sun. Phoenix gasped for air, lungs burning as the sounds of the hospital came rushing in. The voices of paramedics filled the room, their tone urgent but relieved. "We've got a pulse," someone shouted. Phoenix blinked, disoriented but alive, the weight of the experience pressing heavily on their heart. The journey wasn't over. It was only beginning. The return to the physical world was a shock to Phoenix's system. Every sensation felt amplified: the harsh light of the hospital room, the distant beep of machines, the sharp pain radiating from their chest. It was a stark contrast to the all-encompassing light and peace of the experience they had just left behind. Slowly, Phoenix became aware of voices urgent and relieved, speaking in tones that carried a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. "We've got a pulse," one paramedic exclaimed, their words punctuated by the clatter of equipment being packed up. "It's a miracle." The word miracle lingered in Phoenix's mind as consciousness returned fully. It felt both fitting and inadequate to describe what had happened. The physical miracle of survival was one thing, but the transformation within Phoenix was something far greater. They had glimpsed a reality beyond anything they had ever imagined, one that left no room for denial or doubt. Yet the weight of that truth was overwhelming, pressing down with an intensity that rivaled the pain in their body. As Phoenix's eyes adjusted to the harsh hospital lights, they became aware of Adrian sitting nearby, holding their hand with a mix of worry and relief etched into his features. Adrian's presence was a comfort, but it also brought a pang of sorrow. The vision of Adrian on the broad path was fresh in Phoenix's mind, a vivid reminder of the responsibility they bore not only for their own choices but for the influence they had wielded over others. "How are you feeling?" Adrian asked softly, his voice trembling slightly. Phoenix hesitated, unsure how to begin. How could they possibly put into words the experience that had reshaped their very being? How could they explain the depth of the truth they had encountered without alienating someone they loved deeply? The questions weighed heavily, but Phoenix knew that silence was not an option. The truth demanded to be shared, no matter the cost. "I'm alive," Phoenix said finally, their voice hoarse and weak. "But Adrian, something happened. Something I can't explain." Adrian leaned closer, his brow furrowing in concern. "What do you mean? Was it the medication? The trauma? You've been through so much." "No," Phoenix interrupted gently. "It wasn't the medication or the trauma. It was something else. I saw something. Someone. And it's changed everything." The conversation that followed was one of the most difficult Phoenix had ever had. They recounted the experience with as much honesty and detail as they could, describing the light, the figure, the pads, and the overwhelming sense of truth that had been revealed. Adrian listened intently at first, his concern deepening with each word. But as the story unfolded, Phoenix could see skepticism creeping into his expression. "Phoenix," Adrian said carefully, his tone a mix of disbelief and frustration, "you've been through a lot. Near-death experiences can do strange things to the mind. People see things, lights, visions. It doesn't mean they're real." Phoenix shook their head, the conviction in their voice unshakable despite their physical weakness. "This wasn't a hallucination, Adrian. It was real, more real than anything I've ever experienced. I know how it sounds, but I can't deny it. And I can't go back to the way things were. Everything has to change." The words hung heavily between them, creating a chasm that neither seemed ready to cross. Adrian's disbelief was evident, but so was his love. He didn't argue further, but the unspoken tension between them was palpable. Over the next few days, Phoenix's physical recovery progressed, but the spiritual transformation proved far more challenging. The hospital became a place of introspection and reckoning as Phoenix wrestled with the implications of their experience. The life they had built, the wealth, the success, the social accolades now felt hollow, like a house of cards waiting to collapse. Yet letting go of it all was no simple task. It required not only faith but courage, a willingness to face the backlash that was sure to come. The first steps were small but significant. Phoenix began by reaching out to those closest to them, sharing their story with a vulnerability that left them feeling exposed but free. Some responded with curiosity, others with skepticism, and a few with outright hostility. The reactions were painful but unsurprising. After all, Phoenix had spent a lifetime championing ideals that now felt misaligned with the truth they had encountered. To those who knew them well, the sudden change seemed incomprehensible, even suspicious. Adrian, in particular, struggled to reconcile the Phoenix he had loved for years with the person now sitting before him. The rift between them grew as Phoenix became more vocal about their convictions, emphasizing the importance of walking the narrow path, even when it meant abandoning comfort and acceptance. "You're throwing everything away," Adrian said one evening, his frustration finally boiling over. "The life we've built, the causes we've fought for, it all matters. How can you just reject it?" Phoenix met his gaze, their own eyes filled with sorrow. "I'm not rejecting you, Adrian. I'm choosing something bigger, something I can't ignore. I saw where the broad path leads. I can't keep walking it, no matter how comfortable it feels. And I can't let you walk it without trying to show you the truth." Adrian's silence was deafening. He turned away, leaving Phoenix to grapple with the heartbreak of a love strained by irreconcilable differences. It was the cost Phoenix had been warned about, and while it was painful, it only deepened their resolve. The societal backlash came swiftly. News of Phoenix's transformation spread through their social circles. Fueled by whispers and speculation, former friends distanced themselves, business partners severed ties, and the media painted Phoenix as a cautionary tale, a once celebrated figure who had succumbed to what many dismissed as a delusion. The loss of status and influence was staggering, but Phoenix found an unexpected freedom in the simplicity that followed. Selling the penthouse and other symbols of their former life, Phoenix used the proceeds to start anew. They founded a small, unassuming ministry dedicated to helping others explore the deeper questions of existence, questions about purpose, truth, and the choices that shape eternity. The ministry focused on those who, like Phoenix, had built their lives on the broad path, unaware of the emptiness it concealed. Through the ministry, Phoenix encountered people from all walks of life, individuals grappling with doubts, searching for meaning, or burdened by the weight of their own choices. Each conversation was a reminder of the interconnectedness Phoenix had seen during their experience, a chance to guide others toward the narrow path. Some embraced the message with open hearts, while others resisted, clinging to the illusions that had once held Phoenix captive. One day, Adrian reached out unexpectedly. His tone was cautious, but there was a vulnerability that Phoenix hadn't heard in months. "I've been thinking about what you said," Adrian admitted. "About the broad path. I don't know if I believe everything, but I can't stop thinking about it." The conversation that followed was a small but hopeful step toward reconciliation, not the kind that would